Hello, and welcome to another episode of Unboxing Women, where we explore the gender gap in the music and entertainment industry. If you're active in the music business, an independent artist, a musician, or are just curious about how it all works, then this pod is for you. My name is Dana Rex, and with me is my friend Micah Rose, and we are both independent recording artists based in Europe. After having been called a bitch for knowing what we want, we were fed up and decided to be such a bitch and reveal what really goes on behind the scenes. You can listen to us on your favorite podcast platform and our YouTube channel. So today's topic is something I know nothing about. I have no idea what Micah has in store. She's prepped this whole thing. So, Micah, I'm going to give it over to you. What are we talking about today?
So I actually dove into the history of early sound recordings for you all.
Ooh.
Basically, I went into this research trying to find the earliest recordings of the female voice, and I wondered to myself whether they were recorded equally often, how they were perceived by the public, and how well they were paid.
Wow.
But
That's
yeah,
really
yeah,
interesting.
I know,
Okay.
right?
Yes.
So I suggested this. This is actually also in part for a university project, and I suggested this to my professor, who was talking a lot about the I don't know how to pronounce this word, etymology. So like the study of cultures and sounds of cultures, I think. Um, and he was like, "Oh my god, yeah, that's really interesting. I've never thought about that before."
That's really cool.
I was like, let's do it then.
Okay.
So, as I dove into the research, it seemed basically impossible for me to find these answers without extensive research and access to further academic papers and journals. So, I decided instead to research and present what I could find with the access I have and the access you would have. I did try to get access to some journals and papers, but I don't know if they require months in advance, notice time. I didn't have months. So this is what I found. So
Okay.
basically, we all know Google is our friend and helper.
Yeah.
I thought somebody must have researched this already. I can't be the first person to want to know this, but I found actually very, very little.
That's really
At some
interesting.
point, at some point, I found a YouTube video which claimed to have the earliest recorded female voice, which in turn I could trace back to an IASA journal through the British Library. In it, a previously unplayable tinfoil recording was digitally refurbished and played. It is suspected that this recording, which was sent in a letter dated the 16th of April 1937, is a recorded female voice. However, upon further research, I found that this was possibly not the oldest recording of a female voice. But to get into that, I need to explain some context,
Okay.
right? So I will explain what a tinfoil recording is in the following, so you
Good.
don't have
'Cause
to
that
wonder
was
about that.
that was my next question. What is a tinfoil
I can
recording?
explain it, but I do explain it following.
All right. Yeah, and
Um,
1937, that seems so late.
yeah, exactly. So to explain all of this, I'm going to go a little bit into the history of early sound recording.
Cool.
Okay, so we
Yes.
kind of have an overview of the phonograph, etc.
Educate me.
So yes, you're welcome. Uh, so the history of recorded sound starts with an English scientist named Thomas Young in 1807. He invented a machine which was able to transfer sound into a written sound wave onto a cylinder. A similar device was reinvented time and time again, once by a French poet and philosopher, Charles Cros, who unfortunately did not find an adequate mechanic to reproduce his invention, which resembled a cross between a phonogram and a gramophone, which, of course, these were invented later. And I will explain them in turn. So, in 1857, a different Frenchman called Edouard Léon Scott de Martinville invented the phonautograph. Right, so it could record sound similarly to Thomas Young's invention into a written sound wave. So it would basically um, reproduce the waves that sound, right. So the sound wave, it would write it onto a piece of paper, or I actually do not know what the medium was he wrote this into.
So
So
written down but not playable, basically.
Completely written down, not playable.
Okay.
And this actually, previously, people thought another inventor that I will come to soon had invented this, well, the recording and playing back of sound. And this was only discovered in 2008 in the French library. And through digitalizing the sound wave, the written sound wave, researchers were able to play back the recording known as the earliest intelligible recording of the human voice. And this is
Oh,
where we
wow.
come. Yeah. So we were not able to play it back until it was digitalized, right?
Okay. Cool.
So this is where we come to our first recording, which I'm going to give a little bit of a warning to our listeners. There is a lot of static. There is a lot of static. There are reasons for this, which I will come to later on as well. So let's play the first recording of a human voice.
Let's play it. Wow.
Yeah. So do you know what it is? Do you know what's being sung? Can you kind of decipher it, or is it completely nonsensical to you?
I don't know. I don't know what's been sung. It sounds like a man in any case, and
Mhm.
he's like humming something. It sounds like he's humming.
Right. So
Um.
he's not humming, actually. He is singing.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, so this is actually Scott de Martinville. He is singing Clair de la Lune.
Claire de la Lune. How does that
Yeah.
go?
I don't know. He sings the notes are correct, but you can't understand the words. So it's Oh Clair de la Lune,
Ah.
something like that.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so it's a French, I don't know, nursery rhyme
Yeah.
or
It's
something like that.
something. Yeah.
So it's nothing I'm too familiar with.
Oh,
But yeah,
wow.
so
Yeah, you can't
interestingly enough,
understand anything really. That's why I thought he
yeah,
was humming.
yeah, but they probably, so you can, I don't think in this case they could make it any more clear because they were digitalizing the sound wave that was recorded. But in other future, or well, now past, but in other recording ways that I will, mediums that I will talk about, it is possible to get a little bit less background noise.
Well, maybe this is what he actually recorded. Maybe he did record static and everything. And
Probably,
yeah,
yeah, because I mean, we go to so much length to have everything so dead in the vocal booth, so that there is no background noise, because there's always some sort of background noise.
that's
Um,
true. Yeah, that's
yeah,
true. Even now with our like great microphones and researched and like companies that have been doing this for years, you still, if you just put a microphone up in a room and you record like static reverb. There's stuff going on that you never thought was going on. So that's
yeah,
true. So it's very
yeah.
normal that he would have picked up static. um, you know what that
So,
reminds me of actually? Like the written sound wave
mhm,
that you can't play back really. It reminds me of um, when researchers well with earthquakes, like the
mhm.
rumble that they
Seismographs. Yeah.
yeah, kind
Hmm.
of reminds me of
Yeah.
that. What
I mean, it's. I don't. Yeah, I see how it reminds you of that. It is different because I think they are actually recording like the movement of the tectonic plates, like the
yeah,
actual like movement and not sound.
not sound.
But
Yeah,
it's
okay.
worth looking into.
Yeah. All right.
So
Please continue.
yes, but that is a good kind of way of looking at it because that's kind of what it would have looked like, right? So, interestingly enough, this recording was previously erroneously thought to be of a woman singing Clair de la Lune. And having heard what we just heard, you wouldn't think that, but they actually played it. The first time they played it about 2 times too fast.
Oh, they didn't know the speed of the thing. Oh,
No. And
Okay.
then they found written instructions on the recording that showed that researchers had played it back too quickly. And so it resulted in a higher pitch. And looking back and like doing it at the correct speed, it becomes clear that it is probably Martin Will himself who is singing, right?
Ah, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
for those who don't know, if you play something back faster and you don't do a pitch correction down, you will hear like Smurfs singing.
Exactly. Yeah. So, in his lifetime, Martin Will was not able to construct a machine with which to reproduce the recorded sound. And so, we come to the next chapter of sound recording. So, Dana, do you have any guesses on the inventor I'm going to talk about next?
Ooh, not really. When I'm digging back into music history, where are we? What year was this?
So, Martin Will was 1857,
Okay.
and we are a little bit later than that, but still in the late 1800s.
I don't really know because a lot of scientists come to mind, but for me, they're not related to sound.
Hmm.
So, but I'm sure you're going to surprise me. Tell me.
Yeah. So it was actually Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison,
Okay.
famously known for
Isn't that the apple in the tree?
no, no, that's
That's
Newton.
like
No,
that's like
no,
ages
that's
ago.
that's a little bit further back. Yeah, no,
Thomas
Thomas
Edison,
Edison.
the light bulb, the
And
light
people
bulb.
exactly yes. So
Yeah.
people think he was the inventor of the light bulb. Actually, there were a couple of British inventors who had invented the filament, etc., beforehand. And so he did not really invent the light bulb, but he is known for
He
it. So
copyrighted the light bulb.
probably. Um, so it was Thomas Edison,
Okay.
the famous inventor, who in 1877 succeeded in capturing and reproducing sound. This machine was called the phonograph. It captured sound onto a tinfoil cylinder by means of a needle and reproduced it through the same medium. The famous first word captured on the phonograph was the word hello.
Okay.
Yeah, hello.
Hello.
Because obviously, when you're talking into something for the first time, you're like, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. I
We
don't think
still
he said,
do
can you hear me? But yeah, we still do this.
Hello?
Hello.
uh, it would
You
have been
check a mic,
funny.
hello.
It would have been funny if the first words were like, "Is it on?"
That would have been funny. But he knew it was on because
Yes.
he's the inventor. So he was actually doing this himself. So, what do you think? So, the phonograph, I talked before about the tinfoil, right? So, we talked about the tinfoil in the British Library that was unreadable for a long time until they digitalized it. And so, basically, the phonograph, it had a needle, kind of like with the seismograph that you were talking about. And also, if you think about kind of early or now vinyl disc players, right? They also have a needle. So the needle, it carved sound waves into the tinfoil. The tinfoil was on a cylinder, so it
Oh yeah,
moved around its own axis.
I've seen that kind of
And
stuff. Yeah.
then exactly, and then you played it by replaying so you reset the needle to the front, kind of like in vinyl, right? And then you had to crank the phonograph,
Yeah.
right? And so that's kind of the basic mechanism. So, what do you think Edison invented the phonograph for?
Oh God. Oh, so it wasn't to record sound.
It was to record sound, but what purpose do you think he invented it for?
Voicemail. He wanted to send. He didn't like writing cards or letters.
That's actually surprisingly close.
Oh
That is
really?
surprisingly close, yes.
So Edison is really lazy.
No, no.
And he
But
wants to invent something to make his life easier. Isn't that how all inventions end up
that is how
happening?
all inventions start. Yeah. So he wanted to basically. So he actually intended the phonograph as a dictation device
Oh yeah.
to be used to replace stenographers. So basically, that you could record something at any speed. You didn't have to kind of be like, oh, they're keeping up with,
Yeah, okay.
typing, even shorthand and stuff. It would be quicker. However, it wasn't very successful as a dictation device, and the background noise the tinfoil created was not ideal. So, indeed, Alexander Bell, we know him as the inventor of the telephone.
Yeah. Did they
Yeah,
work
so
together?
Alexander Bell, no,
Ah, damn.
actually, no. He later succeeded in improving the tinfoil phonograph by using wax instead of tinfoil, so hard wax,
Oh,
which resulted in less background noise.
okay.
He later patented this as the gramophone in 1886.
Yeah.
So, so the gramophone and the phonograph are very similar. I won't go into the details of how different they are. The main difference, I believe, was that the gramophone had a larger, what do you call it? Trumpet, I guess, to kind of
Hmm.
amplify the sound.
Okay.
Yeah, so I had previously mentioned the tinfoil, right? That is now in the British Library. And although the date on the envelope is dated 1937, Edison moved from using tinfoil to hard wax in 1888. So we can assume that the tinfoil recording actually predates the letter. By how much, however, it's not possible to say as of now. So, although the recording is undoubtedly very old, this unfortunately rules it out as the earliest documented recording of the female voice.
Okay.
Because we have no kind of method of knowing how old it actually is.
Okay.
So, I went back to the drawing board, back to Edison. And as the phonograph was not commercially successful as a dictation device, Edison resorted to another idea he had had in mind when creating the device. Can you have a guess?
Oh my god. I feel like I'm on a quiz. Um well, I'm thinking because the it's rolls right now, right? We're talking
Mhm.
about rolls, and so I would say the needle goes all around it. But when did they start going flat on like on a record?
Oh,
Or is that not
that's
what we're talking about?
that's no, that's a lot further
Oh,
along.
okay.
Actually, I will not include this in today's episode
Okay.
because it goes past the early phases of the recording. Not, I don't want to say recording industry because that's not what it is, but
Yeah.
early era of recording in general.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I'll put you out of your misery.
Yes.
So the other idea he had in mind when creating the device was speaking toys.
Oh,
Right. So in
every parent's nightmare.
1878, exactly. In 1878, he sold the rights to manufacture phonographic toys to Oliver D. Russell. What toys do you think they made? Another quiz question.
Oh god. Uh Action figures? Did they have
So we're
action
talking
figures?
1888, right?
There must be
Or
animals.
1878, sorry. There were animals, definitely. In fact, it was a variety of toys, but and I still kind of wanted you to guess this, but it's because it's so on the nose, it might be a little bit too on the nose.
Okay, wait. What kind of toys? Oh, a
Speaking toys.
karaoke machine.
Too modern. No, we're talking the Victorian era,
I know. I'm like,
right?
what would they want in the Victorian era that makes noise? I would say animals, yeah, I would say or
Okay.
oh babies. Oh god, no. Oh no, like oh god. Ooh! The scary ones with the flippity
Talking
flip eyes.
dolls. Yes, talking dolls. So
So it was for girls basically.
Well, yes and no, because they also made a lot of other toys, right? So they
Okay.
made dogs and I think lions and just animals in general that talked, which was also strange. So let me get into it. So the dolls will actually be the focus of today's topic,
Scary
and the
dolls.
dolls, yeah, the dolls actually bring us to several aspects of the topic, which I found while researching, as they have actually been researched before. So this has been a topic that people have been interested in.
Okay.
So let's first focus on the voices of the dolls and the actual manufacturing process. Okay. So initially, the dolls were recorded by men.
Oh,
However,
of course. Oh, God. Yes.
People did find it rather odd and jarring at times, even disturbing, to hear a full man's voice coming from the unmoving lips of a porcelain doll.
Duh.
I mean, can you imagine having like a doll that already looks creepy in and of itself because they're unmoving, right? Their lips don't move, their eyes, I don't think their eyes moved. And you just hear like a deep baritone coming out of this going like, twinkle, twinkle, little star.
Oh my God. Hello,
Yeah.
I'm a baby. Wah, wah, or
I want
something.
to go to sleep.
why, why
Yeah.
would they even I just find it so unbelievable that these are inventors and they're like, yeah, we're inventing stuff and oh my God, and a doll, and then they don't have like the I'm crying. It's so funny.
Yeah.
They don't have like the conscious thought of like, wait, we're men. We shouldn't record this. Have a child record it or a woman record
Yeah.
it. I just
Yeah.
find it so crazy. Yeah, these are the people at the forefront with the like the biggest brains, but yeah, you know,
Yeah.
I just find it astounding.
Yeah.
I
I
find it
know.
astounding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, indeed, the dolls were soon recorded by work women and later young girls who were casted for their perfect diction.
Ooh.
You have to imagine back then you could not replicate a recording yet. So, these girls sat in little phonograph booths for hours every day, reciting children's tales and songs into the phonograph over and over and over again.
For every doll, a recording for
Yep.
every doll. Oh my
Yep.
God, do we know how many dolls they
Yep.
made?
No, I did not find that actually. Might have found it if I had looked into it more, but no. They
Oh my God.
so they sat there. They were paid, obviously, they were paid, and Edison did at some point find a way to replicate these recordings, but it wasn't until a lot later.
Yeah.
So at that time, every recording was a unique recording. You had to record it once and you had to record it perfectly. So it's kind of like going into the studio. Nowadays, we do a lot of recordings, but we can kind of go like, oh, I don't like that one. And we do comping, right? We comp our vocal takes where we go through and take like little bits of each that we think was good. And then these people obviously couldn't. So everything had to be perfect. So there is, in fact, now what is now in some circles believed to be the oldest recording of a female voice, a recording of a woman singing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. This is the second recording we have for you. And as Dana has already pointed out to me, she had to kind of listen to the beginning of it. It is apparently very creepy. I did not think it to be creepy, but, you know, just be aware.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Creepy woman.
It does sound a little bit creepy. It sounds a little bit witchy.
I
And I hate to use that word because it's so like the connotations are so,
Yes.
varied.
Well, I find it interesting because this is the first time I've listened to it completely. I tried not
Mhm.
to listen to it, but I had to like prep this recording.
Yeah.
And I find it very, as a singer, I find it strange how she sings the rhyme because
It's true.
she goes, twinkle, twinkle, little star. And she goes down like that. Is that
Yeah.
maybe how they sang it before?
I think that this is not a song, to be fair.
She's just
Like
saying it.
everything I found about it was, oh, it's someone singing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. And I, as a vocalist, also listen to it and think, no, she's reciting Twinkle Twinkle Little Star.
Yeah. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. I wonder what you are. That's how you would
Exactly.
say it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And you sing the melody is completely different, right? It's twinkle, twinkle, little star,
Mm-hmm.
how I wonder what you are. So the melody would be completely different. So this for me is an obvious recital.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So basically, this was of a woman, and the background noise does indicate that it is also from a tinfoil recording. So we have to think they started producing these dolls in 78, or around 78, and they didn't swap to hard wax until 88, right?
This is 18.
So 1888,
1888.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So the background noise is this is already a little bit remastered, so this is a lot better than it would have been before.
Wow.
Yeah. So I have listened to a lot of old sound recordings in the past couple of weeks, and they are all very, very unintelligible.
Yeah. I have a question
Yeah.
about the dolls, though. I don't know if you've researched
Mhm.
this or if you've come across this. How did the recording start in the dolls? What was the trigger?
You wound them up.
Ah, okay.
So basically, the phonograph also works on winding it up and, cranking it. So there was a little winding device at the back of the toys, the back of the dolls, and you wound that up, and they would start
Yeah.
reciting.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, like a
Oh
grandfather's
yeah.
clock or something. Yeah. Okay.
So we also talked about how the girls were supposed to have perfect diction, and we need to keep that in mind because it is important later on. So, as I had said, it is here where we divide off into different aspects of these early recordings. There are several things I could find about these dolls. One of the most interesting aspects, I believe, was that these dolls were used to teach children manners and traditional values. Other sources believe them to be more curiosity pieces as they often broke during shipping, but I wanted to look into the manners and traditional values as it plays into how women were seen in society back then. So in the 1860s, the hoop skirt or crinoline became the prevailing fashion for women. And although the accompanying corsets were no longer laced as tightly as before, these skirts were sometimes 12 to 15 feet wide. That's 3.6 to 4.5 meters in
What?
diameter. Yes. So our American listeners will have been, what, at the 12 to 15 feet? For us, it's like, what the fuck does that mean? I don't
Yeah,
understand.
I have no idea.
3.5 to 4.5 meters in diameter. Imagine, how big were the doors? Like, what,
But you
right?
can't even stand next to you can't like gossip or
No,
anything. So
no,
yeah,
you can't. Yeah.
you're like
So
effectively torn apart
obviously,
and isolated.
yeah. So these were the largest variety, but they were huge, right? So accordingly, women were very restricted in their movements and often seemed to have a mechanical way of moving.
Yeah. To
Yeah,
not trip
I
and
wonder why.
fall.
Yeah. Imagine having that large skirts and kind of like, how would you even move? You can't even like, you bump onto everything. You kind of have to make really small movements. How do you even walk? Does like the hoop skirt go in a motion and then you kind of, I don't know.
Like a cock. And if
Yeah,
you fall over and you land on the hoop, then the hoop goes whoop, and it hits you in the head, but
exactly.
everybody sees your ass.
Exactly. So, yeah. So,
Why?
yeah, so women were reported to have like a little bit of mechanical motions, right? And again, I wonder why. But to bring all of this into a little bit more perspective, the 1800s were the time of the Industrial Revolution as well. So the rate at which inventions came and kept coming were unnerving. The 1800s were also, maybe more importantly for this podcast, the time of the women's suffrage movement, which started gathering momentum in the United States in the 1840s. So, for people who don't know what the women's suffrage was, it is women demanding their right to vote, right? And this took a long time. So, the beginning of the 1800s had also brought us the bicycle. And along with it, and bear with me, I will bring my point back to our originally starting point. Dana's already cracking up over here. Along with the bicycle came caricatures of Amazonian like women riding off on their bicycles, leaving their men behind to take care of the household chores.
We were
This
free with the bicycle because we would
exactly,
could go to our friends and do other things than chores.
exactly. So this became quite a theme in the oncoming years. Women were often shown in caricatures as either unknowing in regards to technology, so their weak, innocent, childlike minds were not able to fathom technology, or using technology to their ends, mainly in gaining independence and making men look small or weak. There was also a common trend of the female automaton, a technological woman who was either the perfect embodiment of a woman or an absolute nightmare. It seemed to replicate how women in their crinolines, with their impaired movements, seemed more like machines, more like dolls, than an actual human being. There are a couple of good resources on this, and I will link them in the show notes below. So, what do you think, Dana?
I think this is so interesting. So basically, the fashion that was made probably by men for women restricted them to looking like robots, which was then again used against them, um, and objectified them into okay, so now there's technology and inventions coming, and women are also using them, and so we're no longer women again, we're robots now. And then we start using the bicycle, and we all know what's coming. Anybody who has been on TikTok these last couple of years knows about bicycle face.
Yeah.
So for those who do not know what bicycle face is, this was again used against us. So I always say we as a collective, we the women were bicycling everywhere. You know, we were like cycling, we were hanging out with friends, we were going places. And so the men were frustrated, and doctors started to invent bicycle face. Like, oh my God, you know, you have like rosy cheeks and this and that. And oh my God, that's bicycle face. And you will get very like severe symptoms of bodily things not working anymore if you continue this. Obviously, when you use
Mm.
when you're cycling somewhere, you know you do get, it's
Flushed.
exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get flushed a bit, so it's absolutely normal, but they use it against us and scared us into thinking that, you know, we would get ill or other things, and so we stopped cycling everywhere,
Yeah.
and just stayed home again to serve the man.
Precisely. It's actually really interesting. So, as these caricatures did, in a way, represent the underlying fear of society of women leaving men, right? Becoming independent. It's also interesting that even then, women were being compared to dolls, which we find a lot in nowadays in the society. Some people think that it had to do with the face women had to keep in place because of good manners and society. So smiling, being demure, never showing anger or other emotions. And some people think it had more to do with how women were to be seen and not heard. They were not supposed to have opinions, just look pretty.
Like a doll.
In fact,
Yeah.
exactly. So, in fact, if I may quote Julie Wosk, in Fritz Lang's 1926 film Metropolis, the saintly Maria is replicated through an electrical machine, becoming a diabolical creature who's both seductive and dangerous. The new version of Maria suggests an important theme in works most often created by men: the anxious concern that women would become so transformed through new technologies that their very identity as women would become horrifyingly changed.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's loaded.
Yeah. So there was indeed an underlying fear of what these new machines would bring. These things have not necessarily been linked to the phonograph, but I did find it interesting enough to mention because, according to one source, the Edisonian dolls were used to try to keep the status quo alive in teaching young girls the values of the Victorian era. I don't think that Edison intended for that to be their use, and it would be conjecture on my part to say so. However, looking back historically, the dolls were much more than just a toy.
I find it striking how it's always the fear that men's fear that rebounds back on us. So they're afraid we're leaving. They're afraid of us becoming something else. They're always afraid, and in turn they make us afraid so we can be controlled. And so they don't need to be afraid anymore. So it's
Yeah.
really, men are they're scaredy cats. They're afraid of a lot of things, and it's a bit ridiculous, to be honest.
Yeah. It is, yeah, it's very sad, and I just thought it was really interesting to kind of have a look at what's behind this and how also dolls specifically kind of just, I don't know, it struck a chord for me that it was dolls, because so often nowadays it's still like women who conform to gender roles, and conform to, well, over conform basically. So they're dressed in pink, they have blonde hair, whatever. These kind of stereotypes that we know are not accurate, but these women that conform to these gender roles are often called dolls,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It's like the Victorian Barbie.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, except they were not meant to, look like that, because these dolls actually looked very creepy. I
Ew.
refrained from putting up an image because I actually am morbidly afraid of dolls.
Ah,
So, yeah.
okay. Well,
Um,
do we have a link that we can put in the show notes?
yes,
Okay,
I will put
good.
a link in the show notes. Yes. So I will not go into the women's suffrage movement in this podcast, but it was actually one of the first things I found when researching the involvement of women with the phonograph. So there is a very famous recording of Florence Nightingale, who herself was not a suffragette, but was a role model for many women who wanted to have their own careers. So she was a head nurse, and some sources quote her as being the mother of modern nursing. The recording is in a similar vein to other recordings of famous men in history, which actually is more that all of the well, not all of the recordings I found, but a lot of the recordings that I listened to of men, famous men who had been recorded, they all express a wonder of being heard posthumously. So heard after you died, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And this is also a part of what Florence Nightingale said, so that her voice will linger on, basically. And I thought that was really interesting, because the men who I had researched had basically only said that. And this very famous recording, the first one I found really when researching into women and the phonograph, also was in a similar vein.
Okay.
So, similarly, there's also what researchers to believe to be a recording of Queen Victoria, one of the only other female recordings of the early phonograph era I could find. But one thing I found while researching that nearly put me into feminist rage.
Oh God.
And I say this, I say this, it will be explained. While I could find barely anything on the topic, which women were recorded first, who they were, why they were recorded, and how they were received in the public, or rather not in the sense that I thought that I would find, I did find a whole lot of research about how women were the largest group for record sales in the beginning stages of the phonograph records. So, shopping.
Shop, shop, shop till you drop, girls.
Yeah,
Well, we were entrusted with the funds to go to the store. You know, that is
yeah,
a like
yeah,
a woman thing. That's actually this is really interesting, because we've talked about this before, how women are always underestimated as being a group to market things to, because, well, now we have resources, but actually we had resources before, because who did the shopping? Well, we did the
yeah,
shopping. Obviously, we got
yeah.
a certain amount from the man to shop with, and we had to bring back certain things. But yeah, I guess it was the maid who went shopping for the richer people. So also a woman. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so they, if they
Yeah,
were smart and could squirrel away some funds, they could actually buy stuff for themselves.
Yeah, but it goes deeper than that. You just said they bought stuff for themselves. So think back, we're talking late 1800s onwards here. Women in high society were still basically required to be at home and not work, but they were also required to know how to play an instrument.
Oh.
Hmm.
Oh.
Ah, here it goes. So, research suggests that women became the leading force for record sales. Being able to buy records and play them made their jobs, quote unquote, at home easier.
Okay,
I must
cool.
say, yeah, I find it very suffocating to try to research into women of history to find something along the lines of great voices recorded, maybe even early opera singers and such, only to find women bought stuff and we made that their identity. Which, to be fair, is probably not how it's supposed to be read. But if we take it back to Edison, he himself made many recordings with vocalists, and not only the most famous of the time, in fact, he snubbed many, thinking his hearing to be better. Fun fact, he was hearing impaired.
Oh God. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Edison, but you're still a dick, basically. Is that?
Yeah.
Oh God. Okay, he was
Yeah.
hearing impaired.
He was hearing impaired. I don't know how hard, but apparently it was mentioned in a lot of my research, or the research I found, that he was hearing impaired, and his reviews of the singers he had recorded were never really nice.
That's really weird. Okay, so women were musicians. Women were basically the ones that were singing and entertaining and doing all the playing of instruments everywhere. Is that also did we busk? No, that was
I
probably
don't think so.
frowned upon.
No, no. There were some female instrumentalists, but only those who made it, who were really good. So back then, women were trained in a musical instrument and usually painting and stuff like that in different languages
And like
of high society, I have to say,
not
right?
not sewing, but
Um,
like
Sewing as
crochet or
well.
something.
Yeah, yeah, and stitching and
Yes.
whatnot. So basically, when records came into play, one of the articles I read was actually quite derogatory, in my opinion. They talked about how actually I found a lot on this topic and it made me really mad. Like I said, feminist rage, right? Because I was trying to find stuff on women being recorded and I found, oh yes, women, they it made their jobs easier. They could just buy records and and they would have like an exquisite taste and if they could buy what the man wanted as well, it would be seen as blah blah blah. And I don't know, it was very strange, and obviously it's a part of the history, so I can see why it is researched, but it was just, yeah,
Yeah.
it was kind of the start of, well, maybe not the start, because before that women were seen as frivolous spenders as well, but kind of the modern start of women buying things to help them in their household, like vacuums and stuff,
Yeah.
which were supposed to help, but actually, they didn't really. That's a whole different topic.
That's a whole yeah.
So let's get back to Edison. So
Yes, Edison.
it is absolutely possible that there are early recordings of female voices that we simply do not have, or I did not have access to while researching this topic. But the early pictures I have access to do only show a large group of men sitting around the phonograph. Male musicians, the lot of them. At some point, the phonograph and the gramophone became so widely used for recording and disseminating music that, of course, more female voices were recorded. But as my research was more focused on the early years, the years in which the phonograph was new and breaking waves, I must say my research left me somewhat disappointed.
Hmm.
So I did scratch on a couple other very interesting related topics, such as women being overdubbed in movies, while in one very defining moment, a cordless microphone was invented for a man who refused to be, and I quote, an automatic device mouthing in sync. So while Rex Harrison was allowed to sing and talk with his cordless microphone, his female counterpart, Audrey Hepburn, in My Fair Lady, was forced to not just be an automatic device mouthing in sync, as he put it, but also have someone else's singing voice superimposed on hers.
Wait. So you mean to say that in movies before they actually played the parts that were recorded and they had to go into the studio and record the voices over it because they couldn't capture it on the set actually, but they
Yeah,
invented it for the man in the same scene and didn't give the woman the same microphone.
exactly.
That's
So,
ridiculous.
so Rex Harrison was a Broadway actor at the time as well. And so this is actually from the female automaton My Fair Lady.
May I just
It is
say that Rex Harrison does not ring a bell for me? That name is
no,
totally,
for me
but
either.
Audrey Hepburn does.
Exactly.
That's good.
Exactly. Yeah. So basically, he came from Broadway, and he said, I have to be in the scene. I have to smile and laugh and cry and blah blah blah. I can't be. And this is where the quote came: "An automatic device mouthing in sync." Right? He couldn't do the emotions in that way. He couldn't. He said this is not how he acted,
Okay.
and which is fair enough.
Yeah. He wanted to do
But
it immediately because he's actually doing it, so record it while he's doing it.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so the production company, they casted Audrey Hepburn because they wanted, I think, what do they call it? A magnet, a sales magnet, right? Because Audrey Hepburn was already a very well known voice at that time, or person, actress. And at the time, Julie Andrews was on Broadway, and they opted not to go with Julie
Oh,
Andrews because she was not as well known at the time.
okay.
So so the voice that was superimposed on Audrey Hepburn's singing voice, I don't actually think I have that on record here, but it was not Audrey Hepburn singing, even though she could sing.
That's weird. Who was it? Julie Andrews?
No, it was not Julie Andrews. I'll look it up. I can put the this journal or book, I think, in the post notes as well, show
Cool.
notes.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah. So that's one thing. And I also came across an extensive list of early women who recorded sound themselves in nature or as etymologists. But these topics were too large for me to do, to even more than scratch the surface today. So women recorded, but finding women who had been recorded was a different topic in general.
It's a
It just,
challenge. Yeah.
yeah. Dana, what are your thoughts after having heard these things today?
I think it's super interesting and it makes me want to know more because I have the impression that these things are the source of so many topics that we're still dealing with today. Well, maybe not the source, but like it's like it's a journey, right? With women's suffrage
Hmm.
as well, you know, and then they started wanting to vote, etc. But I'm just and the industrialization. I'm just wondering, you know, with all the hoop skirts and these big things, but they on the other hand they had women and children working in factories because they were more slender and they were able to like go in between the machines, like for the tissue like clothes making
Hmm.
machines, industrial. So I'm just wondering where it doesn't make any sense. You're putting women in these big hoop skirts, but then it's probably only the rich women, and then the
Hmm.
other ones are like wearing just normal frocks or even maybe pants by this time because they need to. They're working. So
Hmm.
yeah, it just all of this stuff and also with the phonogram and everything, it brings up so many questions. And I think it's really interesting that you say I tried to look into this and that, but it's just scratching the surface because it's such a deep rabbit hole to go
Hmm.
into for all these separate topics that are coming out of that. And I just yeah, I think I want to know more on a lot of these things. So yeah, it's super interesting, and maybe for next season we should dive into one of these a little bit deeper.
Yeah, yeah. I actually had a lot of fun researching this. I really did, and even though I was very frustrated a lot of the time. And I think obviously there will be other papers that I haven't found and or didn't have access to. But I was very, very surprised that there was so little on this specific topic. I thought, I really thought there would be a list of women recorded, like the timeline. There wasn't. I'm not sure there was a list of men recorded. There was a list of like the earliest sound recordings, but it didn't even feature one woman. And also it wasn't like super accurate, I think.
Hmm.
So it's really, really difficult. And it just, yeah, I think similar to you, I feel like all of this is really interesting and I would really like to know more. But yeah, again, too long for one episode.
Yeah.
And I hope that I have given you and the listeners an overview so far. And I'm really interested to hear your thoughts, you as the audience. So please write us and let us know what you thought. For that, I think that will be all for today. Let us know how you like this form of episode and whether you would like some more deeply researched episode from us in the future, because this was new for us. Like we have researched obviously before, but this was a little bit more scientific, I would say. And yeah, with that, thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Unboxing Women. If you've ever had an experience you'd like to share with us, send us a DM or tag us in your post with the hashtag suchabitch, or send us an email on suchabitch@unboxingwomen.com. Don't forget to drop us a like on Instagram or wherever you're listening. My name is Micah Rose and I've been chatting with Dana Rex. Tune into another episode of Unboxing Women next week. Thanks again for listening and we'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.